Os desafios que empresas inteligentes têm adiante são transformadores. Os modelos empresariais tradicionais estão em conversão a uma economia digital. A inteligência artificial, o machine learning e o aprendizado profundo estão alimentando uma nova geração de inovação em software. O blockchain tem um potencial de revolucionar todos os setores. A internet das coisas e a internet de tudo possibilitam a integração sistêmica de máquinas com máquinas e de máquinas com pessoas. A computação em nuvem e a Big Data alteram completamente a forma de armazenar, analisar e gerar informação. As tendências tecnológicas já apresentam um caminho ao futuro que ainda desconhecemos. A era digital pede às lideranças empresariais que estejam atentas ao desenvolvimento tecnológico. Uma empresa inteligente conecta experiências e operações. A partir do uso adequado e eficiente da tecnologia mais avançada, transforma insights em ações. Em todas as áreas, em todos os setores. Acelerar a inovação e a automação de processos baseados em dados é acelerar modelos de negócio em transformação no mundo todo. É agregar valor, é gerar receita e é melhorar a eficiência e a experiência de toda uma empresa. O primeiro passo para uma economia digital é a transformação digital. A evolução desse cenário inovador passa necessariamente pela ciência e pela tecnologia. E para falar mais sobre os desafios das pesquisas científicas em curso, eu convido agora a Adriana Aroulho, presidente da SAP Brasil, e Holly Ridings, diretora-chefe de voos da NASA, a primeira mulher a ocupar esse cargo, para uma conversa fundamental.
Welcome, Holly. It's such a pleasure to have you here with us at SAP Now 2020. Thank you so much for joining us. And you have such an amazing career. Let's start from the beginning. I heard the Space Shuttle Challenger accident in 1986 had an impact on little Holly. So tell me, how was it for you, and if you saw this position you have today coming at that time?
Yeah, well, first of all, thank you so much for having me. It's definitely an honor to do this for you, even if we have to do it remotely in this environment. So thank you. You asked about my origin story, right? So everyone kind of has an origin story, how they ended up where they are today. And so when I was in the 6th grade, so it's about age 12, we were sitting in our cafeteria in elementary school and watched the Space Shuttle Challenger launch live. And then, of course, did not make it to orbit. It broke up, killing everyone on board shortly after launch. It's still hard to say that out loud, even many, many years later. And so that had a profound impact on me, right? When you're that age, you don't really know exactly what a chief flight director is, which is the job I do today. But you do know kind of either you run towards problems because you like to solve them, or you run away from them, because they bother you, right? And so I'm definitely a run towards problems because you like to solve them person. I came to the conclusion I wanted to help so that something like that would never happen. I understood what NASA was, and at the time, of course, you know what an astronaut is, and everyone aspires to be an astronaut. But as I moved along in school, I understood, what an engineer does as well. And so went to college to pursue engineering. And after that, decided that the best match of my skills was really what I do today, which is operations, where we take care of the astronauts, the crew members on board from Mission Control in Houston, Texas. And so, from that event, really grew my passion and my love for what we do at NASA and what I do today.
Amazing, amazing. Well, recently people have had different relationships with the cosmos, from comets to black holes, galaxies. How do you evaluate this growing interest in the matters of the universe? And do you think that access to technology affects this process anyhow?
Yes. So, to kind of start with your last statement and the access to technology, absolutely. Just this past May, We launched the first crewed mission, SpaceX Dragon, one of our partners taking crew members to the International Space Station. And there were millions, in the 10 million people, live streaming and had the ability to watch that process while the crew gets in their spacesuits and goes out to the launch pad after saying goodbye to their families. And the whole world could experience that with us, in a way that has not been possible. And so, technology that reaches across, geographic locations in an amazingly, diverse world makes a big difference. And so if you consider, my example, but you expand that across, like you said, black holes, all kinds of, astrophysics and astronomy and all the technology that goes into the other forms of learning about not only our planet, but the solar system and the cosmos. Everything we do today, really enables that for everyone on the planet. And for those of us who do human spaceflight, having that personal aspect makes it even better when that technology is available.
I could not agree more with your statement on the power of technology. Some scientists think that the digital transformation we are facing is equivalent to what the railway was to the industrial age. So do you think that the digital revolution is just beginning, Holly?
That's a really interesting question. I think that for where we sit, our generation of humans, it feels like, we're in the middle, that it's exponential and growing rapidly every single day. When I look at what my young son can do, compared to what I could do at that age, it doesn't feel like the beginning. But I do personally believe we're going to experience exponential growth, right? So it'll accelerate. You've heard the concept of things double and then they double and then they double and then it's exponential. And so I think the answer to your question is, in some ways, yes, it is only just beginning, but from where we sit, it doesn't look like that. But I think that, when my son is older, the rate of change of technology, will be so rapid that it'll be difficult to keep up with. We barely keep up with it today. And, there becomes a point where the way we view technology today is going to be different because it changes and grows so rapidly. So I think about it in terms of exponential growth versus, sort of a beginning and an end, that's linear.
I see. On a practical note now, how does space travel can make life on Earth better?
I'm a huge believer in space travel. We could start a little bit with the philosophical. So, my example earlier of watching the Demo 2 crew. So, Bob Behnken and Doug Hurley launch and the whole planet sort of pauses and watches that. It's something that we can all do together and that shows achievement. I work on the International Space Station and we have, international partners all over the world where we come together. Our international partners, along with all of our many terrestrial and U.S. partners, working on getting back to the moon and then on to Mars. And so you take all of those things and it's something that the whole planet can get behind and is a positive experience, right? I also think that there's some practical reasons. You do a tremendous amount of technology development. There's disruption, right? When you're trying to do something difficult, like get into space, stay in space, live in space, that disrupts all types of industries, software, avionics, guidance navigation, propulsion systems, electrical systems. You need all of those things to make up spacecraft and launch vehicles, but you also need all of those things on Earth. Power plants and the car you drive have most of those components in some ways. And so that disruptive force in our industry, in our global industry, I feel like is really important.
I see. NASA has this program called spinoff that brings technology from the space to the markets. from baby foods, astronaut pills, cell phones with cameras, all those things, straight from NASA to our day-to-day life. So what can we expect? What is coming?
Yeah, that question is probably a little more difficult for me to answer, right? Doing the operations aspect of it, but I do think that a lot of the science we do on the space station eventually will come to market. So we do 3D printing. We're doing a lot of figuring out how to, grow plants. We've done experiments, with fish and mice and spiders, trying to figure out how they work in gravity. And in the absence of gravity, can we take any lessons from, that natural world around us? And miniaturization, right? Making things smaller, being able to build things remotely. Everybody thinks 3D printing. And so all of those aspects, they are conducted on the space station and on our other space missions that are not human by principal investigators all over the world. And then really they have an opportunity to figure out if there's a market for them and they can be shared.
And as a space program leader, I'm assuming you are used to lead people remotely. Is this true? And how has been your experience during COVID-19 pandemic leading teams remotely?
Yeah, so one of the things that I really have a lot of interest in is leadership and considering this question, probably one of my favorites. We do have a distributed system, right? It's an international space station. And then again, we've got our partners for our commercial crew vehicles, and then our partners for Artemis for going to the moon, and at geographic locations, countries, different backgrounds. So we're used to doing remote work. What's been really interesting is the lack of ability to see each other face to face in the way that we used to, right? So I can see you face to face right now, but it's not the same as if I had met you, in a room, and you see body language, you see a lot more detail, obviously in a three-dimensional experience when you meet somebody in person. And so trying to figure out how do you still create and support your people in that environment. So I'd say a lot of the technical work we do, just keeps going, right? We've got our interfaces, our abilities to talk to each other, our systems where we, send files, the companies that are, building components, writing software. But from a leadership standpoint, trying to really be creative is, I think, a challenge that we've got ahead of us as a leader, trying to clear up enough space in your life that's been disrupted to make sure your people are okay, and then even figure out how can you support them in this environment. You can't go over and meet for coffee and look them in the eye. So to me, those are really the challenges. The people, from my standpoint, are what make up NASA and the flight director office and, probably SAP, that's really what makes the difference. So supporting them and then figuring out how to create in this environment are kind of the two challenges I'm focused on right now.
So Holly, a NASA flight director, mechanical engineer, a mother, a wife, how do you cope with all those roles, and what is a typical day in Holly's life?
It's been interesting. I thought about this question. We've been in this mode with the COVID and the pandemic since March, and so the answer now is maybe different than it was before. I think before you could compartmentalize. You get up, you drop your kid off at school, you go to your office, and so. An analogy is where you have all these applications running, but, my kid application is minimized, while I'm in the office, and I'm really focused on that one. And I think, you get good at that, right? You get good at sort of task switching, minimize one app, bring up the other app. And now in the pandemic and the COVID environment where many of us don't have the same patterns, it takes more energy, right? One of the things I've read on is the concept of habits, and you create habits because it's things get done with very little energy, freeing up your brain power to do other things. And so in the absence of that, each of those apps per se, my kid app, my house app, my job app, they're all vying for more time and taking more energy. So I've tried different things, when we first sort of started working from home, and I don't work from home all the time. I mean, when we're in mission control, I'm up at the office, but now I am home the rest of the time. I try to do work like I do work in the office, and sit in front of my computer all day, but I'm fundamentally not a sit still person. And that didn't work very well for me. And I didn't have the get up and move from meeting to meeting, stop in the hallway. So then I said, okay, I'm doing everything on my phone. I'm not sitting down at all. No sitting down. And so then I did that for a couple of weeks. And, then you realize, of course, you've got to find some balance. So I think it requires a tremendous amount of discipline, and you really have to be conscious about trying to build those patterns so that you're not trying to do everything with maximum energy all the time. Some days I accomplish that really well and feel like I've got it all together and I'm balancing on the top of the pin and it's fantastic. And then, you sort of fall off. And so that instability, for people, it's almost like if you're standing on one of those wobble balls all the time, and it just requires more energy than it used to. So that instability, I think, for people is really significant, and how you cope for that. I fundamentally do well in chaos, right? I mean, I like high risk stuff. You can, tell because of my job as the chief flight director, but even if you like it, after a while, you need a break. And so, that's what my day looks like in terms of COVID. Technically, my responsibility is operations for all of NASA's human spaceflight programs. And so International Space Station, in mission control, every day, every hour, every minute, someone on my team of flight directors, of which there's a little more than 25 of us, is in charge and responsible for the space station. So sometimes I sit in that room, and sometimes I'm talking to you, but I'm always responsible, for that work. We have our commercial crew vehicles, and I mentioned, if you think of space station, right, as a hub, and you have all these vehicles coming and going, and so those are supplied by our partners, SpaceX and Boeing at U.S. partners, and then international partners as well. And so we run that hub and organize all of that and do joint operations with those countries and the partners. And then a big focus right now is our exploration side of NASA, which is our Artemis mission, boots on the moon by 2024. And so that has lots of pieces. You have a launch vehicle, you have a vehicle that carries the astronauts to the moon. Its name is Orion. We have landers that actually, proposals for landers are being worked on by multiple companies. And so we work on that every day. So technically, it's this very wide breadth that I'm responsible for. So that's probably a very long description, but that's what it looks like. Almost every day is different. Every hour is different. Keeps me on my toes.
It sounds super exciting. Well, you were the first woman to lead such a great responsibility at NASA. Wow. Tell us, how was it? And what do you say to the little girls who also dream about the space?
Yeah, so thanks very much for that. It has been a tremendous honor to be the first female chief flight director at NASA. It's been a wonderful road for me working at NASA, and being mentored by many, many people who were always very supportive. I tend to be a little stubborn, and you hear about grit, so I work quite hard, and so you put yourself in a position where then when that opportunity happens, you can reach out and be a part of that. And so I was lucky enough to get selected to be the first female chief. You mentioned being a role model for little girls, and it's interesting. So, I have a young son. And so I always answer that question as, being a role model, for all children and all people, right? It's good for my, young son to see his mom, be in a position like this. And it's also good then for the young girls to look and see themselves. And so I think it's good for everyone. Representation matters. I think that's something I didn't really realize because I did have such a positive experience at NASA. But since I've had this job, I realized that representation really matters. And so I try, very hard to make sure that I honor that and make myself available for people who need that opportunity to see themselves.
Well, I really enjoyed talking to you, Holly. Thank you so much. And hopefully next time we can have you here with us in Brazil. Thanks for being with us at SAP Now 2020.
Well, thank you so much for having me. What you do hosting this event for leaders all over the world, makes us all better. That's how we learn from each other, is to hear thoughts and ideas and then consider them and have that be our professional growth and disruption. And so it's an honor for me. It's helpful for me to do this and talk to you guys. And I'm happy to meet you hopefully somewhere in the future. Thank you very much.
Que conversa mais inspiradora! Realmente, a ciência, a tecnologia e a inovação fazem parte do desenvolvimento humano. É nossa responsabilidade acompanhar de perto essa evolução. E com isso, construir modelos de negócios cada vez mais viáveis, sustentáveis e que contribuam para um mundo melhor. Muito obrigada!